here is an example of the bedrooms where we've got one of our severe cracks. If you can just go into there, you can see how wide the crack is along the wall, and it goes all the way from the bottom to the top and across the room. I mean, and I have to specify that this is on a good day. On a bad day, I can fit my hand through the cracks. When my neighbor opposite smokes, the smoke comes through to here, and we can smell everything. When his window is open, we can feel the breeze that comes from him all the way down to us, because that's how big the cracks are. This looks like an earthquake has struck, and this is concrete wall as well, by the way. This is concrete, and to me, this is very severe. And if they've not taken it serious, then who will?
In May 2017, and it was a particularly warm day, and I noticed that the cracks and the gaps that had always been there were suddenly considerably wider, to the point that I could fit my hand into them. And I also spoke to my neighbour downstairs, and she told me that she had gaps that were widening as well, and she also had a window that had just cracked of its own accord, and she didn't really understand why that had happened. And so we started getting quite nervous about this and wondering if there was something wrong with the structure of the building.
I've been here since 1998, and there's been cracks here for 20 years in every part of my flat. Other neighbours, everybody has a crack. We've had leaks for decades now. This has not been saved.
We've been living at this property for about 10 years now. We initially thought maybe it was just, small slight cracks that are normal for tower buildings. But then after 2-3 years, we noticed it became more apparent that they were getting wider and wider and wider.
These gaps have been filled over the years. Lots of people have got previous repair works on them. What did they think they were filling? A giant structure with cracks in it, and they're coming along and putting sealant in it. What did they think was going on? How is this not fed back to kind of people who understand the broader picture? They've got no excuse for saying, "Oh, we didn't know anything about this."
It's in the wardrobe of the bedroom. That's been repaired and supposed to be fireproof with mastic and wood, but that's not really fire resistant. So if you did get a fire in here or in here, there's certainly a danger that it could pass through there, particularly at night, would be extremely dangerous.
I started reading about compartmentation and the stay put policy. So the idea that each flat is a sealed box where you're going to be safe for an hour if a fire breaks out somewhere else. And you're supposed to wait there, you're supposed to stay put and wait for the fire brigade to instruct you on what to do, whether you're supposed to leave or whether they're going to come and get you out of your flat. And it suddenly dawned on me that with these gaps and cracks that we had in the flat, that compartmentation was breached. If I could put my hand through the gap pretty much into the next bedroom, then these aren't sealed boxes. These are boxes with holes in them leading from one flat to another. And so if there was a fire downstairs, that those smoke and flames were going to come up. And I realised that this was a really, really serious matter.
When Grenfell happened, for me the thing was that I thought this could have been me or this block, and besides the shock that something like this can happen in the middle of London.
We saw it on the news, and it was horrific. It was horrific to watch, and it was horrific to reflect on our own situation of living in a high-rise council tower block and thinking, what if that had been us?
The first time I heard about the problems at the Ledbury estate was when we had a joint meeting with London Fire Brigade, the council, and invited residents at the fire station at Old Kent Road a few days after the tragedy at Grenfell. And that's when the issue was first raised and it was brought to my attention.
I first reported my concerns about the structure of the building 15 years ago. I'd been here about a year and I removed a fitted cupboard and found that there was a huge crack in the wall. Done a little bit of research, and of course the first thing you see when you're looking up about tower blocks is Ronan Point.
5 people died after a gas explosion caused the partial collapse of Ronan Point.
Ronan Point is a large panel system block. They were Taylor Woodrow Anglian blocks, which makes them the same system as the Ledbury estate.
So they're constructed with separate panels for the walls, floors. They rely in the main on gravity and their own weight, holding the wall together. Now, if you get an explosion or part of the structure moves for any reason, then the building is in danger of what is known as progressive collapse. So if one part fails, everything fails.
Tenants in Ronan Point reported that to us and to Sam Webb, the architect, that when they were in their flats, they could smell cooking food that was being cooked on lower floors. They could hear people's conversations as if they were in the room with them. They could hear their television programmes as if they were in the next room.
Cooking smells, that was just part and parcel of living in the block. Sometimes you kind of thought that you'd cooked a meal and forgotten about it.
They come round, they check the flats, we show them the cracking, we show them the mould around the toilets, around the kitchen, at the corridors, in the entrance, in the living room, and nothing is ever done about it. They say it's just normal, it's just normal. Every flat has it, every tower block has it.
This is social housing, but you know, the way social housing is, a lot of people who I know who live here, they have more than one job. You know, they work for this. And I think to put people on one side under the pressure to always stand by your obligation that you signed, that you're going to pay your rent, which is fair enough, and then at the same time having to go through so many obstacles to get actually the standard that you're paying for.
65% of all homes in Southwark were owned by the council. Tower Hamlets was the only other council in the country that had that level of social housing. It was mainly in very big estates that were hard to manage. And Southwark Council was not a good manager. And Southwark Council is not made to be a landlord. Basically, if you want my honest opinion, much as I think council housing is really important, I don't think that council politicians and council bureaucrats are the best people to be managing a large, complex, rented housing estate.
So Arnold Tarling and Tony Bird came out to visit one evening to our flat. They both immediately went to the kitchen and they said to me, "You've got a gas supply?" And I said, "Yeah." I thought this was about gaps. And they just shook their heads in utter disbelief and started making phone calls. At this time, I didn't know that much about these types of buildings and the dangers of what they were talking about with the gas. And they sat down with me and they said to me, "These buildings are not allowed to have gas. There shouldn't be gas in these buildings."
We had a large public meeting with officers from the council and people from Arup where they showed us kind of an interim report, Arup did, of what they'd been doing. They assured us that these were not dangerous blocks. They assured us these were of a type B structure.
So basically what I'm saying is that for these first cracks and gaps, we understand them and they are not a structural concern.
At this meeting, there were angry residents. There were residents that were frightened. They were saying we just don't feel safe.
Please stop talking about it's not making me feel comfortable.
There were residents who were more technically knowledgeable than others, who were really scrutinising the council about the technical detail of what they were talking about and weren't satisfied with the answers they were getting.
I think we have to finish your test and then come back and say the building is safe or not. Can I see the next question?
there were residents who were complaining that they'd suffered issues of gaps and leaks and so on for years, and they'd been ignored, and all of those tensions and angers came out at this meeting.
On the first meeting I was very emotional because I was very confused as well, and I was worried, and as far as I was concerned, anything could have happened. They could have just told us, you know, it's an emergency, we have to close the block, you have to leave in 2 days or whatever.
And it's scary that we're sitting here for 2 hours and I can sit here because, you know, the stories keep coming. And you just build something there where you don't answer. You know, people sleep in one room because they're scared. They're scared not because there's fire, but because of how you behave.
And there was a strange setting because sort of next to us there was a few people, some guys who were in suits, who didn't say anything, who were just there. You know, you could see how there was some of the councillors who really didn't have much to say because, you know, the situation was very clear from what people said that this is maybe at this moment an emergency, but really we're talking here about decades of neglect.
You don't know what you're doing. There is no straight answer so far. Are we, when you say the best way you can say, this is my life. There's my home, there's my work, there's everything. And you telling me a straight answer is, you can't give me.
Southwark's reputation, Ledbury's reputation, is more important than the people who live in this estate and the people who vote them in and who has voted Labour in for so many years. Their reputation matters more than the reality that we are not safe.
I can't live here. Would you live in the property? Are you going to move into our properties?
That would be great.
There's no security.
Somebody stood up, an independent expert, and said, can we talk about the gas supply in the towers?
So my question is, are you happy that gas central heating is in your flats?
There were different, slightly different forms of construction which were done.
Arup attempted to answer very carefully, saying there are 2 types of structure, large panel system structure. Ones that are safe to have gas and ones that aren't. And that's it. They didn't say any more. But Southwark Council's staff, the head of engineering and asset management, went on to say, we are satisfied that these buildings are safe to have gas.
I sort of, by that point, I just thought, why is this guy talking about stuff that's not really relevant to what we're talking about? We're talking about cracks and gaps in the building, and we're talking about fire risk, and it just didn't occur to me at the time that that would be such an issue, such a big issue. And it was only sort of in the following weeks and months that I realised how huge an issue that was, which was kind of the catalyst, for want of a better term, that has changed the way that we live now.
Hundreds of residents in Southwark will be evacuated from their homes over gas safety fears.
Those tower blocks are not safe. That's why the gas has been cut off.
Residents on an estate in Peckham say for more than a decade their concerns about cracks in their building have been ignored.
I'm really sorry for the situation that the residents are facing. You know, the level of anxiety and worry and uncertainty for the future is absolutely awful for them.
Anything that would have compromised one of the panels in the building had the ability to bring the whole building down, because this strengthening had never been done. And so I think at that point myself and quite a lot of the other residents completely lost faith in the council altogether.
I feel quite angry and kind of anxious at the moment, but angry that I've been living in a place that was unsafe for all this time. And obviously you bring stuff up to the council and they tell you something is safe. That's what you want to hear. So when I was originally told this was a land construction, I was like, oh great. I was like really pleased to hear that. So that's what's really annoyed me, that the council, I feel, fobbed off. Whether it was intentional or it was just incompetence from Southwark Council, we don't know yet.
There's 224 flats on the estate, and the majority of people had come out to this meeting and got to know each other and started sharing stories. And the magnitude of this just grew massively. Numbers were exchanged, and we had a WhatsApp group, and we've got this Facebook group. So at any time, if anyone was worried, there was someone that they could contact, there was a neighbour they could speak to, and we were all going through this together.
Yeah, the Ledbury Action Group, the actual Facebook page, which is at the core of it, has been amazing. It's because people can post videos and photos of evidence, and when it will probably come to the time we will have to kind of face Southwark Council with evidence of previous kind of disrepair, it's going to be like a great resource for that, and it's really brought the community together. You know, all the time I've lived here, I don't think the community has been as strong as this.
Why I think this is so horrible is because these are communities, you know, and these communities exist, and they exist also over generations. This is not just something, you know, I've been here 25 years, there's people who've been here 50 years.
Really gives you an idea of your own age, let's not say mortality, but your own age. You really realise that I'm getting old in this block when you see people that you knew as children and then blink and you see them again as adults, and that's quite funny and quite weird.
You know, my mum put her coming here as a refugee and working so hard to make a home and making it pretty and making it a nice place for us to have memories. And every year, I've spent 20 Christmases here, like for 20 years now, and it's sad to know that, you know, this place was never safe.
I do have direct connections with the Aylesbury and with Gloucester Road, the 5 estates that were demolished much earlier around Burgess Park, I think it is. So I knew about Southwark's ambitions to demolish quite a lot.
You know, neglect to a point where it's not worth saving. You remove the people that don't bring in the income that you could get. You don't even have to back it up with substantial property, you know. You can sell the land from Ledbury Estate in itself, gives you some nice space to build a few luxury homes and very, very few social housing.
I worked with Southwark while I was working for the government between 1980 and 1990 on something called the Priority Estates Project. Southwark was one of the local authorities I had a lot to do with, and the state of bureaucracy and maladministration and mismanagement of council housing in Southwark was nothing less than shocking, in fact.
There is an uprising happening around social housing, or just housing in general, in situations where you have local authorities that are supposedly for the people, but are quite willing to demolish council homes and not replace them, and sell those luxury flats off to private investors and socially cleanse the area, in that they're effectively forcing those social housing tenants out further and further out of London because they can't afford to rent privately. Then of course you're going to have a revolt on your hands. We've seen the Haygate estate saga. We've seen the Aylesbury estate saga, which is ongoing. We've seen the battles that people have faced when they've come up against the local authority who are so determined to just wash those people away and bring in other types of people. And actually, this is our London. It doesn't belong to any one person or any one group. It's for all of us.
Ledbury tenants deserve respect! Ledbury tenants deserve respect!
We're fighting for our rights, and we will continue to march until we're all out and we're all safe. This is not going to stop. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.